We're doing a two-part series now with this. We're doing a bigger series, but two-part sermon, I should say, on the mountain moving prayer. We got started last week, and basically, if you have a sheet near you, we got through the 5 points on the back. Is what we did. We get intro and 5 points on the back, and that is conditions of the heart and mind in preparation for mountain moving prayer. Just say that this mountain moving prayer thing is something that is very personal to me. It's something that I feel like God has kind of done a work in my life with regard to, and so the things that I'm sharing with you are not really something I read out of a book, which may make you feel safer, going like, well, at least somebody wrote that down someplace and you took it or whatever. But this is maybe what I would say something that I learned out of desperation more than anything, out of a sense of being overwhelmed or feeling like there's too many things in front of me that I don't know how to get through, and I don't know how to get over. I don't know how to get around. And so in that sense of desperation, there have been times when I would say God has taught me life lessons, things that not only made a difference right now for me in that moment, but sort of changed the way I approach things for the rest of my life. And this is one of those. It's one of the reasons why I didn't want to just hurry through it last week, and let's go ahead and bring it over to today. I want to just ask you, if you would, to look at the scripture at the top of your sheet. And I'm not going to read the larger set of scripture. Last week, if you weren't here last week or have not seen it, then I would encourage you to go on Facebook and watch the sermon, because it is direct run into where we are today. I will just take a couple moments to kind of brief us on where we were. But I'm going to read only the passage as it is given to you actually on the new sheet that you received today. And I just want to say also that I did put verse 21 in there, and that is from a New King James Version. The rest of it's from the NIV. So just in case you're poking around and want to know. And so here, Jesus had just come down off the Mount of Transfiguration with 3 of his disciples. And the situation is that there was a man who had come to the other disciples and asked him to heal the son of a demon. And they weren't able to cast the demon out. And so when Jesus came down off of the mountain and showed up, a man comes to him and says, hey, your disciples could not do this. And then so Jesus did heal the boy and set him free. And then after that happened, the disciples pulled him aside and said, hey, why were we not able to cast out this demon? Why were we've done this. I mean, this is not like something we haven't done before. What happened? So Jesus is responding to that. He says, because you have so little faith. Like I said last week, sometimes in Christian circles, we think you have to be real careful what you say to anybody. Don't want to offend anybody. Now our whole world's, I don't know whether Facebook did this or what, but it's like I've never lived in a culture that's so easily offended by anything. Okay, I mean we are a very highly offended culture, and so really be careful. So Jesus, I don't think you ever saw him really being politically correct anyway. So his disciples are like kind of huddling in, going, Jesus, what was wrong? Like I'm thinking they're thinking something was really bad wrong with those people, or something. Like what was so bad about them that we couldn't cast this demon out? And Jesus, I picture him kind of pushing back a little bit in his chair on the rock he was sitting on or whatever, and going, because you have such little faith. Like, Jesus, be a nice person here. I mean, you might hurt their feelings. You might make the disciples feel bad. Tell them they don't have much faith. And so he went on to say, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Now, something we have to have in our mind and understand Jesus was not really talking about the size of their faith. He's talking about the kind of faith they had. He's saying they did, there was somehow in their casting out this demon, they were thinking they could do it or it was up to them or something. They were not trusting God with this. And so he says, you have such little faith. In other words, you're not trusting, you're not believing, you've kind of taken it on yourself. And I want to ask, because he goes on to say, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, now a mustard seed is very, very small. So it's not about size, because he was even saying, if you just have a little bit of faith, you could move a mountain. And so really he's saying, you guys didn't even have any faith, or you had faith in the wrong thing. You were trusting yourself. Do not raise your hand on this, but I want to ask you a question, a personal question. Have you ever trusted yourself more than you've trusted God? Have you ever trusted yourself more than you've trusted God? Because that's what I think these disciples were doing. They're his disciples. They'd cast out demons before in the name of Jesus. But they had become self-confident. Do you know the most dangerous place for us? Now, I believe in self-confidence, appropriate self-confidence. Believe that God has designed you with great gifts and capabilities and that you're capable of doing some pretty significant things. But always have a dependence and humility toward God. And so these guys, they knew how to go through the practice of healing somebody, but somewhere they had forgotten the connection to their faith in God's ability to heal somebody. And whenever we think it's up to us and we can do this on our own, we're in dangerous territory. And because God will let us go alone, he'll let us do it on our own, but the truth is we'll never be as effective as we could be if we even just had a little bit of faith. A little bit of faith. You know, it's just a story that I love, but that story I mentioned a few weeks ago about those guys that just were barely saved, and they came out and scared off the bad guys, you know. They were barely saved. Well, I'm going to tell you what. I've noticed sometimes people who are barely saved can have greater faith than people who have conditioned themselves not to trust in God. Now, that doesn't mean they're a more mature believer. It just simply means that they can have what you call kind of abandoned faith. Like, hey, God saved me. He can do anything. And so there's that sense, that awareness of God's ability. And that's what Jesus is talking about, that God can do anything. It says here, nothing will be impossible for us if we believe. Now, that doesn't mean to name it and claim it. And I already talked about that, so you have to listen to previous message on that. But the truth is that we have capabilities way beyond our capability because of God's capability. And so for me personally, I had kind of skirted off, as I mentioned, these verses, not like they're not important, but like, I just never dove into them very deeply. And it's like, you know, I can't really picture myself needing to say, hey, mountain, you go over here, you know, and move over there. And I didn't see God as one who wanted us to do sensational kinds of miracles, so I never focused too much on that. But guess what? Life happened, and I ran into some mountains. And in fact, at one point, ran into a mountain range. And so I as I looked at those mountains, I'm going, man, how? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to get through this. I don't know how to get over it. I don't know how to get around it. What am I going to do? And God brought me back to these verses. And this isn't the only place in the Bible that talks about the mountain moving. I only have time to deal with in one passage. But so he brought me back to this and allowed me to just kind of go in, go under, and look underneath and say, well, why would Jesus say that? Why would he say that? What's the importance of mountains being moved? And if you notice on the back of your sheet or on your notes from before, that there are a few conditions that are talked about in this passage, and I just want you to know those are very important. So make sure if you weren't here last Sunday or whatever, make sure that you pay attention to those because those matter. And if you didn't hear the message, please listen to it because I explained those. I'm not going to go over them again, but I wanted to mention them one more time. Now, what I want you to do is look at the sheet of paper. Look at whichever one you have. You have one notes on it or one, but your sheet of paper, the mountain moving prayer sheet. And we talked about possibility, mountains of calling, our hopes, dreams, fears, problems, and guidance, and those kinds of things. Where I talked about that, so you go back and listen. Now I want to come below the picture, and I want to tell you this is how that God began to teach me how to deal with mountains that I needed to see moved. Now, I'm not saying that this is, something you have to do or should do. I would encourage you to think about it if you have a mountain in front of you. And, you say, well, what qualifies for a mountain? Well, it's too big for you to move by yourself. You look at it and you go, I have no idea. Or to figure out how to move. You can figure out ideas and thoughts and things. And so, but it's too big for you to move or to figure out how to move. You go, I look at it and go, I don't know how to solve this problem. Like I do whenever I look at a complicated math problem. I love basic math, but I have a strong conviction that that math should not include the alphabet. It's just my conviction. That's my personal conviction, okay? Now, I know that we have some math nerds in here, okay? And you're like, oh, that's the best kind of math. Like, okay, you go ahead and invent all kinds of weird stuff, but that's all right. I'll use it. But once they put the alphabet in, I'm done, And so, whenever I try to figure out a mountain that is something that I can't figure out, it feels like algebra to me, or other more advanced math. It feels like that to me. Like I'm just looking at this and I'm like, God, I have no idea. I have no idea. And I could start listing things that could be mountains. I could even give you some of my mountains. But the problem is, I'm always concerned that will divert you from your mountain. So what you need to do is say, right now in my life, is there something in front of me that I don't have figured out? I'm not sure I can figure it out. And I don't know for sure what to do. I'm not sure what to do. Now, what I've noticed with mountains is there are times whenever I'm kind of forced into, at this juncture, as I'm facing that mountain, I have to make a decision because it's a timed thing. It may not be a decision like how we're going to get through, but the mountain's moving toward me, and I have to make some kind of a decision. And in those moments, then what you have to do is make the best decision that you can. It may not be the final decision. It may not move the mountain, but there has to be a decision. Then you make the best decision that you can with the best information that you have, and you keep moving forward. But here is the process. Okay, look down at the bottom. Number one, first and foremost, identify your mountain, and so this means, and here's how I do it. Okay, I take a sheet just like this. And at the top of the sheet, above Mountain Moving Prayer, I write down the name of the mountain. And if that mountain is a situation, just try to put it as precisely as I can, what the situation is. This is a situation I do not know how to figure out and how to get through by myself. It could be a decision, all these different things. It could be, and not all mountains are negative, okay? You might really feel like God has kind of put it on your heart to start a business of some kind. And you hear about how many small businesses fail. And so you're nervous about that. But so it can be something very, very positive, but still very hard. And so whatever it is, you put that at the top. You identify your mountain. Because if you don't know what your mountain is, you just feel like I'm stuck in life and I don't know what. If you don't identify your mountain, then you don't really know what you're battling with. And so you got to identify your mountain. You say, well, I have 5 mountains. Okay, I would recommend, honestly, make copies of the sheet and don't mix the mountains, okay? Put them out as a mountain range, but this mountain's this mountain, this mountain's this mountain, this mountain's this one, this one's this, and this one's this. And I can tell you, like I said, one time I had a range, and so there was more than one mountain that I was dealing with, and so I had each one on their own sheet. And so you identify the mountain. Second thing you do is you ask God for directions. You say, God, I'm kind of at a dead end here. I got this mountain in front of me, and I don't know how to get through it, over it, around it. I don't know how to excavate it, for it to go away. I don't know how. But you said that if we had faith, even as a grain of mustard, that mountain could be moved. So I believe this mountain can be moved. I have the faith to believe it. I just don't know how to go about it. And so ask God for directions. And then get as clear of an understanding as possible about God's intent for this mountain. In other words, does he want it moved? You may want it moved, but does God want it moved? You know something I've found about mountains in my life now that I've prayed through about a dozen mountains in my life at this point, and most of them started, this mountain moving prayer stuff started about 10, 12 years ago. And in the midst of that, something I've noticed, there are times when God leaves mountains there much, much longer than I think he should leave them there. And so sometimes I find myself months, there's been a couple of times, it's been years later, and I'm still standing at the mountain and I'm going, man, God, that mountain's not moving. But you said mountains move. And I think we've identified this as a mountain that you want moved and I want moved. Do we need to talk? So what do we need to do here? So understand you're on God's timetable. You're not on your timetable. And mountain moving, and I will also say this, there have been only about 2 times out of this 12 mountain range that over 12 mountains over the period of 10 years or so that I've seen God move. There's been a couple times whenever I went through this process and kind of went on with life and looked up and the mountain was gone. Now, when I say that, I mean, there were certain things that had happened, obviously, but I realized that mountain is gone. And we had worked through it, we'd worked past, and it was good. So sometimes it happens faster than you think. But what I would say is this, don't worry about the speed of it. Worry about the fact that you're in this with God and that you're not alone and that God does move mountains. But again, you're on his timetable. So does he want it moved? And the other question is, do you want it moved? Remember when Jesus came to this guy that had been lame and he was brought to the pool and he had been lame for how many? Does anybody remember how many years he'd been lame? How many? It's over 30. You're right. You're in the right. It's like 37 years, I believe. 37 years, if I'm not mistaken. 37 years. So you know what Jesus asked him? He didn't say, well, son, rise, you're healed. He asked him a very, very important question. He said, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? That is a very, very important question for us all to answer when we're facing a mountain. Do you really want that mountain moved? Sometimes people like to have a mountain to use as an excuse. Well, I would do that, but you know what I have this. I've got this obstacle in front of me. I can't. So sometimes people use mountains for excuses. And they really don't want God to take their excuse away. I could do better. I would do better. I would achieve this. I would get a college education, or I would have this job, or I would, whatever it is. But, and some people get to where they really like that but, because it serves their purpose okay. This man had somebody brought him to this pool 37 years, 37, 38 years, I forget what is right, it's upper 30s, okay? And you know what? So that means somebody took care of him for all those years. Guess what? When Jesus heals him, guess what he's going to have to do? He's going to have to take care of himself I mean, the guy that's been bringing them out there, or the people have been bringing them out there, they're not going to go, hey, hop on for another ride here, buddy. I'm going to, lean on me. They're going to go, lean on yourself, big boy. You look like you can walk okay. Hey, have you gotten a job yet? Have you gotten a job yet? Have you gotten a job yet? Hey, this guy's going to have to go to work. Everybody's not going to hand everything to him. Everything's not going to go. Some people like to stay damaged goods so they don't have to take responsibility for their life. I'm just saying. And I believe it's true. I highly doubt it's true of anybody in here. But just in case it is, I have to say it, okay? Because to be faithful. Do you want it moved? Because God's not going to force moving a mountain on you. He's not going to do it. If God wants it and you want it, then I suggest two actions. And the first one is this. Go over to the left column, if you would. Here's what I encourage. This is what I do. Okay, I'm just telling you. This is kind of a personal lesson of how this is fleshed out for me. On the left side, it says put together a plan of action that you can do now or in the future. In other words, look at that mountain and go, what can I do to move that mountain? Oh, I could call this person. Oh, I could check this out. I could do this. And you know what? There have been times I've come up with such a long list that I'm like, well, maybe by the time I'm done with this, that mountain will be moved. Like maybe it's something I can work through. Maybe it's something that I can. And so I need to do everything that I can do. God won't do things for me that I can do for myself. God always lets us participate in the miracle. You remember the widow who had just a little bit of meal and a little bit of oil? And you know what the prophet said to her? Make something for me. Like, give you my last? But when she gave what she had, God supplied her need throughout the rest of that famine. She never ran out. So God, every miracle that you see happen, you'll see a response on the person. Jesus, do you think Jesus needed that little boy's lunch to feed the 5,000? Do you think he really needed their lunch? He could have spoken the word and it would have even been set in front of everybody. But look what he did. He found someone with a little lunch, and the faith that little kid had to give up that lunch, he used that faith to multiply out. And then the disciples didn't just sit around and go, wow, this is a great buffet here we're having. He put them to work. Sit everybody down in groups of this many, and you go out and you keep coming back until everybody's fed. We like to do rocking chair faith, where we sit in our rocking chair and we're going, all right, God, I need you to go do this for me, and this for me, and this for me, and this for me. One of the kids yesterday was sitting at the table eating, and they said, and Angie was sitting there eating too. I was sitting there eating too. I don't know why I probably assumed she was a soft target or something, But they said, hey, Mom, could you go get me another drink? I was like, did something happen to your legs, or did... what? So, but that's how we are with God. We're like, hey, God, man, I need this, I need that, this is bothering me. God, we just like whiners to God. We saw it in the Old Testament. Israel was that way. We have a lot of the same tendencies. We just are like always asking God these, and I can promise you, God will let you solve a lot of your own problems. In fact, He wants you to. That's why He gave you a brain that works. So make a list of everything that you can do. And then when you kind of exhausted that list, you're going like, I can't think of anything else. But here's things I know I can do. Then go over to the other side, and I want you just to follow along as I share this. This is God's side of the page, okay? Whole page belongs to Him, but this is where you're talking to God. Commit to stay in conversation with God until the mountain is moved. Don't do this one time and walk away. The mountain may be moved in a certain way, but it won't be moved in the same way is if you stay engaged with God. So make a commitment that you and God are going to do this together. We're going to face the wind together. We're going to look at this mountain and we're going to do what we can do together. And so first of all, you ask him for direction. Say, God, is there anything else? I've got this list over here. Is there anything else that I can do that you could reveal to me? Are there any ideas that I just haven't come up with? And then ask him for favor. You know, there is a side to us as Christians, and I fall into this category of sometimes so wanting to be humble before God that we forget that we can ask him for favor. We can ask him for favor. There's nothing wrong with that. It's something wrong with being self-centered and selfish. But there's not something wrong with asking God to favor us in a situation, especially if we believe it's a righteous situation or a righteous process. So ask for his favor. Ask for miracles. You know, we've been talking about keeping the little book of little miracles. This falls into the category of a bigger miracle. Notice over, say, the last 10 or 12 years, I'm talking about maybe 12 mountains. That's about one a year, close to one a year. So this isn't something happening every day. And some years I may not have had any moved, and then other years maybe I had 2 or 3 mountains moved. And so when you're asking for miracles, this is, you know, what I think will happen. This is what I believe. This is what I've observed. God will do many of the small miracles that we record in that daily book, before you go to bed at night. That he'll do many of the small miracles, and that's what brings about the big miracle of the mountain being removed. Ask for miracles. Commit 90% of your conversation with God about this mountain needing to be moved to listening. Now, that 90% is just it's a round number, so we can go up or down, whatever, you know. But what I'm saying is a much higher percentage to listening than to talking. And I have called, I have a name for this prayer. This isn't my daily prayer time. This isn't what I do on a daily basis. This is what I call my Dunkin' Donut prayer time. And the reason I call it Dunkin' Donut prayer time is because that's the kind of coffee I drink, okay? And I've noticed most people who are quite intelligent do the same thing. No, I'm just that's a joke. That's a joke. Boy, I better watch. My jokes are kind of like that today, aren't they? I'm sorry, you know. But, you know, I know, I've seen some fairly intelligent people drinking Starbucks. I've seen some. But the truth is, for me, I like to sit down with a cup of coffee with God. And so I call it my Dunkin' Donut time with God. And I will say, and I say this, and this doesn't have to be, I've just found this true for myself. In order to truly go through this process and to be able to give God some good listening time, I can't do it in less than an hour. I don't need more than an hour, but normally I need an hour. 1 hour. So that's obviously not something you're going to do every day. It may not be something you do every week, but it may depend on how urgent the mountain is. But you've got to start someplace. And you typically kind of need to be alone because you know how interruptions are. In this kind of thing, we're talking about listening. So let me just give you a very quick window of how I might do this. I've done a Dunkin' Donut time in here. I've done it in my office. I've done it at home. I've done it various places. So I don't have just one place that I do it. It really is just trying to find a time where I won't be interrupted and for an hour. And to sit down, identify the mountain, walk through these various things here, begin to put down the things that I believe I could do. And then, after I'm done with that, go over and look at this right section and commit it to God and sit there with paper and pen ready and keep sipping on my coffee, as I'm pretty sure God's drinking Dunkin' Donuts too. But anyway, whatever he can choose. Anyway, so we're sitting there and we're having coffee together, and I'm trying to not be distracted by other things and listen. And listen. Now, I do need to tell you this, just in all fairness. Rarely, it does happen occasionally, rarely am I able to write something down that I heard God say to me. And when I say heard say, here's how God speaks to me. God speaks to me in very precise ideas and thoughts. And you say, how do you know they're God thoughts? Because they weren't thoughts I would think of myself. If I'd have thought of myself, I'd have put them over here. You know, I'm already thinking everything. And over here. So here's how it normally happens for me. Within a week or so of me having had a Dunkin' Donut time with God, I'll be driving down the road and an idea will come through my mind that is like, oh my goodness, how did I not see that before? I never even thought about that. I'm like, I got to hang on to that. And then I realize God is revealing to me what I need to know about moving the mountain. Now, frequently, that one time isn't enough for the mountain to be moved, okay? What it did was move me forward toward us getting the mountain moved. I might need 10 of those. I might need 6 of those. I don't think it's ever gone probably much over 10 of those impressions on my spirit or impressions on my mind for God to influence my thinking in that. I don't think it has done that with a mountain, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't. And so I want to encourage you to realize that what you do whenever you sit down and you open up and you say, God, this is an area I want your help in. What you've done, you've opened your mind, your spirit to receive what God would say to you. And again, I don't expect your voice, but expect a strong impression in your heart, a thought to come through your mind that is a new thought. It is like a revelation for you. Like, wow, I just never saw that. Now, I had this given to me. It's been a few years ago. And what I keep it in my office, but what I like about it is it pictures what I'm talking about. You alone with Jesus, sitting there. It doesn't have to be a cup of coffee. It could be whatever. Just probably not an alcoholic beverage. Just throwing that in there as a caution. You know, you might have visions and dreams you weren't counting on. But I'm not in any way even saying this is the perfect formula. I don't really like formulas and things like that so much. But I do believe there are ways that God has worked, and I've found him to work through this process in my life. And it's kind of raw for me from a standpoint of it's not something I learned someplace or whatever. It's something that I feel like God kind of helped me process through. My hope and prayer is that if you're facing a mountain, you would at least maybe try this, or when you face a mountain, that you would try it. And don't get hung up on the hour. Don't get hung up. And the 90% time comes into play more whenever you come back to the sheet a second time. So what I will often do is say, let's just say that, Monday I were to do this. Then I've laid it before the Lord, and I need to leave it there before the Lord. And I'll have a sense it's time for me to revisit that. Now, it might be later in the week, it might be next week, it might be 2 weeks from then. And try to etch out that time to sit down and identify. But I've already identified, so this second time, I just update the information on the left, ask myself the question, have I done what I said I could do? If I haven't, then how could I expect God to do what I can't do? I need to do what I can do. So it's a reminder, have I done what I committed to do? And then it gives you more time to sit before the Lord. And I find that sitting before the Lord time, not to be the time I get answers, but the time I get peace. That I have this deep awareness that I'm in the presence of God. And just like we're talking about coming around the altar this morning, that he cares about me, that I'm not in this by myself, that he said mountains could be moved. If it's something he wants and something I want, and I'm pretty sure of that, it's just a matter of us getting it figured out together. It's going to happen. And that's where our faith comes in. We believe it's going to happen. We can see that it's going to happen. It just hasn't happened yet. But God's going to guide us through it.